It was a Tuesday morning in early spring, the kind where the sun feels just warm enough to make you believe winter's finally over. Birds chirped like they'd been waiting all year for this day. I was on my back deck, sipping coffee, scrolling through emails on my phone, and listening to my golden retriever, Max, snore softly beside me. For a moment, life felt calm. Simple. Like maybe the universe had decided to take a break from throwing curveballs. That's when I heard it, the faint creak of a gate latch. At first, I thought I imagined it. My head turned, slow and curious, eyes narrowing toward the side yard. Our 6-foot cedar fence, one I'd paid good money for, kept the world out and my peace in. No one ever just came through that gate. Not delivery guys, not neighbors, no one. Hell, even my friends texted before stopping by. The latch clicked again, louder this time. I stood up, coffee mug dangling from my fingers, pulse quickening as a figure rounded the corner into my yard. A man, late 50s, maybe early 60s, tall, a little too tan for early spring. He wore pressed khaki pants, a pale blue polo shirt tucked neatly into his waistband, and a smug expression that set every nerve in my body on edge. "Morning," he said, like we were old buddies. I set the mug down on the railing, stepped forward, and tried to keep my voice calm. "Can I help you?" He glanced around the yard like he owned the place. His gaze lingered on the freshly planted hydrangeas by the back fence, the ones my wife, Emma, had spent the entire weekend arranging. "Name's Walter Hughes," he said finally, his voice carrying that oily tone people use when they think they're in charge. "President of the Oak Ridge HOA. I already didn't like him. "Uh-huh," I said slowly. "And what are you doing in my backyard, Walter?" He smiled like I just asked him to explain gravity. "Routine inspection." "Routine what?" I stepped closer, Max lifting his head now, ears perked, sensing my unease. "You can't just walk into my yard without permission." Walter chuckled under his breath, a dry, humorless sound. "Actually, according to the Oak Ridge bylaws you agreed to when you bought this house, I can. Section 8, Paragraph 3, homeowners' lots may be accessed by the HOA for the purposes of ensuring compliance." And frankly, his eyes swept the yard again, zeroing in on the small fire pit I'd installed near the corner. I've already spotted a violation. My fists clenched before I even realized it. That fire pit's legal. It's portable, and I keep it 10 feet from the house. Check the county code. "County code doesn't matter," he said smoothly, pulling a little leather-bound booklet from his back pocket like it was a badge. "HOA rules are stricter. No open flames. Page 14. I stared at him, every muscle in my body screaming to tell this guy where to shove his bylaws. But Emma's voice floated in my head. "Don't lose your temper, Jake. Not worth it. Except right now, it felt worth it." "You didn't knock?" I said, my voice low now, tight with anger. "You didn't ask. You just walked in like you owned the place." His smile widened, smug as hell. "I don't need to ask. That did it." I stepped forward, closing the gap between us until I could smell his aftershave, a sharp, citrusy scent that made my teeth clench harder. "Get out of my yard," I said through gritted teeth. "Now." Walter raised his brows, like he couldn't believe I had the audacity to tell him what to do. "You might want to reconsider your tone, Mr. Carson," he said, tilting his head in that fake-friendly way that feels more like a threat. "The board has a lot of authority here." Max stood now, fur bristling, a low growl rumbling from his throat. Walter's eyes flicked nervously toward him, but his smirk didn't falter. "Not much, anyway." "You've been warned," Walter said finally, turning on his heel and heading back toward the gate like this was all some big game to him. "Expect a notice in the mail." The latch clicked, the gate swung shut, and he was gone. For a long time, I just stood there, heart pounding, fists tight, every muscle trembling with the effort of not losing my mind. Max pressed against my leg, whining softly, and I scratched behind his ears to calm him. Though really, I was the one who needed calming. I walked back to the deck, sank into a chair, and stared out at the yard we'd worked so hard on. The yard that was supposed to be ours. My chest ached with something I hadn't felt in years, a hot, bitter mix of anger and helplessness. I hated that feeling. Hated knowing some smug HOA president thought he could walk into my life, into my home, and do whatever the hell he wanted. Not happening. Not on my watch. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Do I call Emma at work? Tell her what happened? No. She'd only worry. And besides, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As I scrolled, looking for the HOA bylaws he'd mentioned, a thought struck me. A dark, stubborn thought that burned hotter than any fire pit. If Walter Hughes wanted a war, he just found the right guy to give him one. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Emma breathing softly beside me, Max curled up at our feet. I kept replaying the day over and over. The creak of the gate, that smug grin, his voice dripping authority like oil on water. And then another sound crept into my mind. Not the creak of a gate. Not Walter's smug tone. The click of a lock. Because when he left, I realized something. I hadn't heard the gate lock when he closed it. My pulse quickened as the thought dug deeper. The gate had been locked that morning. I'd locked it myself after taking out the trash. So how had Walter gotten in? The answer hit me like a punch to the gut. He had a key. I woke the next morning with one thought pounding in my head. This is just the beginning. And God help Walter Hughes when I'm done. The letter came 3 days later, tucked in a plain white envelope stamped with the HOA logo like it was some kind of official government seal. Emma found it first, standing at the kitchen island in her scrubs, hair pulled back in that messy bun she always wore before her shift at the hospital. I walked in from the garage just as she slid it open with the edge of a butter knife. Her face went from curious to pale in seconds. "What is it?" I asked, setting my coffee on the counter. She held it out without a word. My stomach dropped before I even read the damn thing. Notice of violation, non-compliant structures. Fire pit installation in backyard does not comply with Oak Ridge HOA regulations, Section 4.2.1. Immediate removal required within 14 days. Failure to comply will result in fines of $250 per day. My blood boiled. You've got to be kidding me. Emma bit her lip. Jake, maybe we should just. No. I slammed the letter on the counter, making Max jump where he lay by the door. We are not tearing down a perfectly legal fire pit because some power-drunk HOA clown says so. She gave me that look, the one that said she agreed with me, but also didn't want a war on her hands. I don't want this to turn into a huge thing. Well, it already is. I snapped, then softened when I saw her eyes. She didn't deserve this. None of it. I took a deep breath, ran a hand through my hair. I'll handle it. Promise me, she said, her voice soft now. Promise me you won't lose your temper. I nodded, but inside, I was already past the point of calm. That night, after Emma left for her shift, I sat in the garage with the letter in one hand and a copy of the HOA bylaws in the other. I'd printed the damn thing off the HOA website. All 57 pages of tiny legal text that Walter loved to wave around like scripture. Section 8, paragraph 3. The one he quoted that morning. I found it. Read it 3 times. Homeowners' lots may be accessed by the HOA for the purposes of ensuring compliance, provided reasonable notice is given. Reasonable notice. He gave me no notice. I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the garage walls. He broke his own rule. And if I could prove that, maybe, just maybe, I could turn this around. But the fire pit wasn't the real issue anymore. This wasn't about stone and steel. It was about principle. About a man walking into my yard like he owned it and smirking while he did it. And then, as if the universe wanted to test my last shred of patience, the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the front door. I froze, heart pounding. Max barked, nails skittering on the hardwood as he raced toward the entryway. I followed, every nerve on edge. When I opened the door, the porch light spilled over a familiar face. Walter Hughes, HOA president, smiling like a politician shaking hands on election day. "Evening, Jake," he said, voice smooth as ever. "Just thought I'd swing by to discuss that notice you received." I gripped the doorframe so I wouldn't plant my fist in his smug jaw. "Discuss? What's there to discuss? You broke into my yard." His smile didn't even twitch. "Oh, let's not use such harsh language. Access is allowed under the bylaws." With reasonable notice, I shot back. "You gave me none." He tilted his head, pretending to think. Well, the board considers in-person notification sufficient. Which I did. I stared at him, jaw tight. You walked in without knocking. That's not notice. That's trespassing. His smile finally slipped, just a fraction. Jake, the HOA exists to maintain property values, to protect our community. If everyone just did whatever they wanted. Cut the speech, I snapped. You're not the mayor. You're a guy with a clipboard and a god complex. That did it. The fake smile vanished, replaced by something colder. I'll remind you, noncompliance comes with steep penalties and hostility toward board members. He let the sentence hang like a threat. I stepped forward, lowering my voice to a dangerous calm. You ever set foot in my yard again without permission, and I swear to God, Walter, you'll regret it. For a long second, neither of us moved. Max growled low, teeth bared, the sound vibrating through the quiet night. Then Walter forced a thin smile, like this was just a friendly chat. Enjoy your evening, Jake, he said softly, turning toward his car. I shut the door hard enough to rattle the frame. That night, sleep was a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, smug, unbothered, certain he could do whatever the hell he wanted. And maybe he could. People like Walter always found a way to win, unless someone stopped him. Around 2 a.m., I sat up in bed, heart pounding, an idea forming in the dark. If Walter wanted to fight, fine. But I wasn't going to fight on his terms. I was going to fight smart. The next morning, I installed two things, a new lock on the gate and a small security camera disguised as a birdhouse overlooking the backyard. If Walter came back, I'd know. And I'd have proof. But as I stood there on the deck, tightening the last screw, a question burned in my mind like acid. What if he already had a key? How else had he gotten in last time without breaking the latch? The thought chilled me to the bone. Did the HOA have master keys? Did Walter have one? I looked out over the yard, the morning sun casting long shadows across the grass, and felt something twist in my gut. This wasn't just about a fire pit anymore. It was about privacy, safety, control. And something told me Walter Hughes wasn't done. Not even close. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, the camera caught him. Walter. In my yard. Again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. The footage hit me like a gut punch. It was Saturday afternoon. Emma was at the hospital pulling a double, and I was in the garage swapping out the oil in my truck when the notification popped up on my phone. Motion detected. Backyard camera. At first, I figured it was a squirrel or Max wandering near the fence. But when I opened the feed, my stomach turned to ice. Walter, standing in my yard like it belonged to him. Khaki pants, polo tucked in, sunglasses perched on his nose like he was some kind of Secret Service agent. And he wasn't alone. Another man stood beside him, shorter, stockier, wearing a matching blue HOA polo with the logo stitched on the chest. Clipboard in hand. They were pointing at the fire pit, at my flower beds, even my deck railing like they were inspecting a crime scene. I sat there frozen, oil rag clutched in my fist, staring at the screen as my blood pressure spiked. My mind went white-hot with rage, but beneath that, something darker stirred. Fear. Because I had locked that gate. I had replaced the damn lock. And yet here they were. Inside. How? I rewound the footage, watched them approach from the side of the house. Walter reached the gate, bent down, and, without hesitation, slid a key into the new lock. A key. They had a key. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Max barked from inside, picking up on my energy. My pulse roared in my ears. This wasn't just arrogance. This was violation. And it meant one thing. They could come and go whenever they damn well pleased. Not anymore. I stormed through the house, heart hammering, fury blinding. By the time I hit the back deck, they were still there, standing near the hydrangeas Emma loved so much, writing notes like they were planning an execution. Walter looked up, saw me coming, and his smirk spread slow and wide like oil on water. Well, good afternoon, Jake, he called, like we were old friends sharing lemonade. What the hell are you doing in my yard? I bellowed, voice shaking with rage. Walter gestured to the other guy. Routine inspection. You really should check your mail more often. We sent a notice. I charged down the steps, Max hot on my heels, barking like he wanted a piece of Walter as bad as I did. You used a key. A key. To MY Gate. Association key, Walter said smoothly, like that explained everything. Every board member has one for emergency access. Emergency? I laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. What's the emergency here, Walter? My deck railing out of alignment? The fire pit threatening national security. The shorter guy shifted nervously, but Walter? He didn't flinch, didn't blink. Your hostility is noted, Jake, he said, voice like a blade slipping under skin. And I'll remind you, you agreed to these terms when you bought this property. I stopped 3 feet from him, fists clenched so tight they hurt. I didn't agree to you walking into my backyard whenever you feel like it. Technically. Shut up, I snarled, stepping closer. Get out. Now. Walter smiled, slow and venomous. Careful, Jake. Threatening a board member can have serious consequences. Max lunged then, teeth snapping inches from Walter's leg. He jumped back, sunglasses slipping down his nose, the first real crack in his armor. I grabbed Max's collar, holding him back, though truth be told, part of me wanted to let him go. Out, I growled. Before I call the cops. Walter hesitated, jaw tight. Then, with a curt nod to his clipboard-carrying sidekick, he turned toward the gate. This isn't over, he said, voice low, dark, and full of promise. I watched them leave, chest heaving, Max still growling at my side. When the gate clicked shut, I sagged against the railing, breath ragged, rage boiling like acid in my veins. This man was dangerous. Not in the gun and mask kind of way, but in the smug, rule-twisting, power-hungry way that could ruin your life with a pen stroke. He wanted control, and he wasn't going to stop until he broke me. Unless I broke him first. That night, I downloaded the footage, burned it to a flash drive, and stared at the tiny piece of plastic like it was a loaded weapon. This was my proof. My leverage. Trespassing, unauthorized access. Hell, maybe even harassment. I had him. Or at least, I thought I did. Then Emma came home. She walked through the door, exhaustion etched into her face, and I knew I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. She was already stretched thin, patience coating on her shift, double hours every weekend, and the last thing she needed was to worry about a neighborhood tyrant. So I kissed her forehead, told her I loved her, and lied through my teeth when she asked, "Everything okay?" Because everything was far from okay. 2 days later, the hammer fell. I got home from work to find a bright orange notice taped to my front door like some scarlet letter. Final warning. Noncompliance will result in legal action and property lien. A lien. On my house. My vision tunneled, breath coming in short, sharp bursts. They weren't just playing games anymore. They were going for the throat. And that's when something inside me snapped. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the footage, and hit send. Straight to the county sheriff's department, along with a statement that made my hands shake as I typed. Unauthorized entry. Trespassing. Harassment. I have proof. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mr. Carson? The voice was calm, professional. This is Deputy Larson with the county sheriff's office. We saw your submission. Can you come down to the station tomorrow to give a full statement? My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Yeah, I said, voice barely steady. Yeah, I can. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt since Walter first walked through my gate. Hope. The next morning, I walked into the sheriff's office with the flash drive in my pocket and fire in my gut. I laid it all out. Every detail, every violation, every smug word Walter ever said. And when I handed over the footage, Deputy Larson watched it with a slow, measured expression that told me everything I needed to know. Mr. Carson, he said finally, looking me dead in the eye. That's trespassing. And from what you've told me, it's harassment too. We're going to take this seriously. I walked out of that station feeling 10 feet tall. Walter thought he was untouchable. Thought he could bully me into submission. But he was about to learn the hard way. Nobody breaks into my yard and walks away clean. 1 week later, it happened. Blue lights flashing at the end of the street. 2 squad cars parked in front of Walter's pristine white Colonial. Neighbors peeking from behind curtains like kids at a parade. And Walter Hughes? HOA King, master of the clipboard universe? Cuffed, hands behind his back, face pale as chalk. I stood on my porch, Max at my side, watching as they read him his rights. And when his eyes met mine across the lawn, I smiled. Because this wasn't just justice. This was payback. But what happened after? Oh, that's where things really got interesting. The news spread through Oak Ridge like wildfire. By sunset, every neighbor, every chatty dog walker, every gossip queen with a glass of Chardonnay knew the HOA president had been arrested. They said it happened in his driveway. Said the cops showed up right after Walter came home from a board meeting. Said he argued. Of course he did. But they cuffed him anyway. Trespassing, they whispered. Abuse of power. Illegal entry. His name was mud before they even pulled away from the curb. And me? I should have felt nothing but triumph. Sweet, glorious vindication. The tyrant was toppled, the king dethroned. But as I watched those flashing lights disappear down Oak Ridge Lane, a thought crept into my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. This wasn't over. Not yet. The next day, I woke to a quiet that felt different, heavier. Emma was in the kitchen, phone in hand, eyes wide. "Jake," she said, her voice tight. "You need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. A headline blared across the local news site. HOA president arrested. Investigation uncovers possible embezzlement. I blinked. What? She scrolled down, reading aloud. Sources say the arrest of Oak Ridge HOA President Walter Hughes for alleged trespassing has led investigators to uncover financial discrepancies in the HOA accounts, suggesting possible misuse of funds. I stared at her, stunned. Embezzlement? This was bigger than a fire pit. Bigger than bylaws. Walter wasn't just a control freak. He was a crook. And here's the kicker. The article mentioned the whistleblower. The anonymous tip that sparked the deeper audit. Guess who that was? Me. That little additional details box I filled out when I sent in the footage, where I mentioned Walter's threats, his obsession with fines, the possibility of financial abuse. Yeah, turns out the sheriff's office took that seriously. Real seriously. I didn't just bring Walter down for trespassing. I opened the door to a full-blown criminal investigation. By the end of the week, Walter was out on bail, but the HOA board? They were in chaos. Emergency meetings. Angry emails. Half the neighborhood wanted to dissolve the HOA entirely. The other half wanted to appoint a new president immediately. And in the middle of it all, my name kept coming up. Not out loud, not yet, but in the whispers. The sideways glances when I walked Max. The tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I wasn't just the guy who got Walter arrested. I was the guy who blew the lid off everything. Emma felt it too. "People are acting weird," she said one night as we sat on the deck, the fire pit glowing warm between us. "Like they don't know if they should thank you or avoid you." I sipped my beer, staring into the flames. "Good. Let him wonder." She gave me a look. "Jake." "I'm serious, Em." "He broke into our yard. Threatened us. Tried to put a lien on our house. I don't care if they hate me. I'd do it again." She smiled then, small, proud, tired. "I know you would." For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. Walter was gone. The fire pit was safe. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. 2 nights later, it happened. A knock at the door. Not loud. Not urgent. Just 3 slow raps, like a whisper against the wood. Max barked, but this time, his bark wasn't the wild, protective kind. It was low, uneasy. I opened the door and froze. Walter stood on my porch. No cuffs. No smug grin. Just hollow eyes and a face that looked 10 years older than it did last week. His polo was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Jake," he said quietly, "we need to talk." Every muscle in my body screamed to slam the door. Call the cops. Do anything but what I did, which was stand there like an idiot and say, "About what?" He glanced over his shoulder, like he thought someone might be watching. Then he leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "They think I did this alone," he said. "But I wasn't the only one." I stared at him, pulse pounding. "What the hell are you talking about?" His eyes darted past me, into the house. "Can I come in?" "Not a chance." He swallowed hard, jaw tight. "You don't understand, Jake. You're in danger." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. "From who?" Before he could answer, a car turned onto the street. Headlights washed over the porch. Walter flinched like a hunted animal. He stepped back, eyes wide with something I'd never seen on his face before. Fear. "I'll find another way," he muttered. Then he turned and bolted down the steps, disappearing into the dark. I stood there, heart in my throat, Max whining at my side, staring after him. Danger? From who? What the hell was he talking about? The sheriff called the next day. "Mr. Carson, we appreciate your cooperation, but we need you to be careful. This investigation is uncovering more than we expected." "What does that mean?" I asked, gripping the phone so tight it hurt. There was a pause on the line. Then, calmly, the deputy said, "It means this isn't just about Walter Hughes. And it isn't just about money." The call ended, leaving me standing in the kitchen, cold dread pooling in my gut. That night, as I sat by the fire pit with Emma, the flames dancing in the cool night air, one thought burned hotter than the fire. This started with a man in my yard. Now I wasn't sure if it would end with me still standing. Because some wars? They don't end when the first battle's won. They just change shape. And in the quiet of that suburban night, I realized something I'd never forget. The real fight hadn't even started yet. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.